a thought that came over to me over Shabbos that I want to share with you before we get into Parasha's Toldot. In Parasha's Chayei, what did we say? We said that a person normally forgets the pain of a loss of a person after how many months?
1 year.
1 year, 12 months. Normally it takes 12 months to forget about the loss.
To heal, yeah.
Right, to heal. That's why we say Kaddish for 1 year, the Avelis is for 1 year. We mentioned Yitzchak took how long to get over the loss of his mother?
3
We
years.
said 3 years. Because he was 37 when his mother died. And then only when he was 40 did he get married, he brought Rivka in, and he says, I have nechama for the loss. We also learned that he was so badly hurt or wounded at the Akedah that the Malachim took him where?
Shamayim.
To Shemayim, to Gan Eden, to get healed.
3 years.
So this is what I thought. If he was in Shemayim for 3 years, so who was taking care of him in Shemayim? His mother.
Oh.
Because his mother had died, she was in Gan Eden.
Oh.
So now I understand why for 3 years he didn't forget his mother. That means your mother, Sarah Imenu died, where's your neshama? In Gan Eden. Yitzchak is where? In Gan Eden. So of course for 3 years he didn't forget his mother. It just makes sense that for 3 years he was with his mother. It was only after he came back from Gan Eden and he no longer had his mother and he got married to Rivka, he could have nechama. But it made perfect sense to me why he took 3 years when everybody else takes 1 year.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was in Shemayim with his mother. So that was one observation. Listen to the next observation. Parshas Toldot. Ve'ela Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. The Sefer brings it down. A very interesting observation. I want you to listen to this observation. It's obvious, but most people don't think about it. There was a period of time, 15 years, when Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were at the same time in the world sitting around the same table. Think about it. When Yaakov was born, how old was his father? 60. How old was Avraham? 160.
Yeah.
Avraham lived to be 175.
Yes.
So for 15 years,
They're together.
they were together. That means at the Shabbos table, you had the Zayda, Avraham, the son Yitzchak, and baby Yaakov. But when Yaakov was 5, 6, 7, he was learning Torah, imagine what that Shabbos table must have been like. At one table, so you didn't have all the mothers. Sarah was already gone, Rachel Leah died young. You never had all the mothers.
Only fathers.
But you had all the fathers. Imagine. So when I said this to somebody, says, hey, the table was bigger than you think. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. But there was also Esav over there. There was Ishmael over there. So he says that was some table. You got to figure that if Yaakov was there, Esav was there, and Rivka was there, that was some Shabbos table. Imagine the Zmiros at that table. Big time. But if you think about it, there was at least 15 years. You see, the previous generations never enjoyed that type of thing. People didn't live that long. Very few people grew up with grandparents. Yeah. I didn't grow up with grandparents. My father's parents died in Auschwitz. My mother's parents came across from the war, but they were very distant. Most of us did not grow up with grandparents. It was unusual. Today, sometimes you grow up with not only one set of grandparents, but 2 sets of grandparents, and sometimes even great-grandparents. Yeah. My grandchildren have a great-grandparent. Their grandmother, my mother-in-law is still alive, so they have a great-grandmother. So, imagine back then to have Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, one table, that's pretty tremendous. The next thing, he brings this down from Rabbeinu Bachai. Very interesting. It's a very interesting observation, and I want to share it with you tonight as well. He says as follows, from Rabbeinu Bachai, I'll read it to you in Hebrew, what he writes over here. He says, Kosa Rabbeinu Bachai. You've heard of the Sefer Rabbeinu Bachai. He says, Paliya Gedola, there was a tremendous miracle with the herayon, with the pregnancy of Rivka. Because normally, when a woman is having twins, each child is in their own placenta. Right?
Separate.
They're in their own placenta. Rabbeinu Bachai says, Yaakov and Esau were in one placenta.
Oh.
That's
How did
why
they
they were
survive?
fighting. That's why they were pushing. That's why when Esau was born, Yaakov could hold on to his heel.
Oh,
Says
otherwise
it- he says it was very unusual. And that's why she was suffering so much. That means there wasn't as if the child, normally a child is called, the placenta is called a shilya. He says normally,
Like a bag.
kol uber v'uber, each embryo, b'shilya b'fnei atzma, is their own placenta. Avol Eitzel Yaakov ve'Esav hoye yitzira shneim b'shilya achas, one placenta. Therefore, vayisrotetzu habonim b'kirba. That's what he brings down. He brings down another opinion that says, no, there were two separate placentas, but the water broke at the same time, so they both came out together. That's what that was about, he says. But, you know, but it's interesting that he says they were born in the one placenta. He also brings down, very interesting, he says that Lavan had no children. When Yitzchak said to Yaakov, go to Lavan's house and find the wife, that was a bracha. And because of that bracha, Lavan had two daughters. Rachel and Leah were twins. Now, for 14 years, Yaakov studied in Beis Medrash Ever. So by the time he got there, they were 14 years old. He worked 7 years. So by the time he married them, they were 21 years old. Okay, so, you know, it made sense. Of course, bless you, they didn't live that long. Rachel lived to be 36 when she died. Leah was 44. You know, Sarah lived long. Rivka lived to be 133 or something. Bilhah lived long. But Rachel and Leah did not live long. They lived more like was common in those days. He brings down, you know, a famous Gemara Megillah. Gemara says that Talmud Torah is even greater than Kibbud Avayim. How do we know this? Because the 14 years that Yaakov learned the Beis Medrash Ever, he was never punished for. So even though he was away from his father, he was away from his mother, and for the 22 years he was punished, and Joseph was away 22 years, but he was never punished for the 14 years. Must be, he says, that it wasn't an Avera for those 14 years. So we see that Talmud Torah is so great, it's even greater than Kibbud Avayim. Okay, you all know what happened in France. We know what happened, the whole world knows what happened with ISIS and everything else. I'm going to read you an article written in Spain. Okay, I want you to listen to this article. It was written by someone named Sebastian Villar Rodriguez in 2008. Now, I'm not convinced that's his real name. I suspect it's not his real name.
Yeah. It scared me.
Many people write articles in a pseudonym. A pseudonym is a false name. But I want you to listen to this article. If you don't understand any of the words, tell me. I want you to listen carefully to this article. It's a shocking article. Listen to this. He's writing, I walked down the street in Barcelona. Barcelona is in Spain. And suddenly discovered a terrible truth. Europe died in Auschwitz. The continent, Europe, died in Auschwitz. We killed 6 million Jews and replaced them with 20 million Muslims. That means we killed all these Jews, and now we took in 20 million Muslims. I listened on the radio tonight because I was trying to find parking, how the United States doesn't want to take people from Syria anymore, you know, because a lot of these terrorists were from Syria who came in because they were refugees. They weren't refugees, they were fakers. In Auschwitz, we burnt a culture, thought, creativity, talent. We destroyed the chosen people, truly chosen, because they produced great and wonderful people who changed the world. The contribution of these people is felt in all areas of life, science, art, international trade, and above all, the conscience of the world. The Jews, who are so talented, those we burnt. That's what we burnt, he says. But now, because we want to be under the pretense of tolerance, and we want to prove ourselves that we don't have the disease of racism, so we open our gates to 20 million Muslims. And what are they bringing us? Stupidity and ignorance, religious extremism and lack of tolerance, crime and poverty, due to their unwillingness to work and support their families with pride. And what do we get? What do we get for our trouble? They have blown up our trains. They have turned our beautiful Spanish cities into the third world, drowning in filth and crime. They're shut up in their apartments and receive free from the government, and they plan the murder and destruction of their naive hosts. Jews come, they work hard, they build. These guys are sitting there thinking about how to kill us.
Destroy.
How to destroy us. How to destroy our cities, blow up our trains, shoot people in the streets. That's what they're thinking about. And thus, in our misery, we have exchanged culture for fanatical hatred, creative skill for destructive skill, intelligence for backwardness and superstition. We have exchanged the pursuit of peace of the Jews of Europe and the talent for a better future for their children, because they love life and their life is holy, for those who pursue death, are people consumed by desire for death, and they're willing to kill themselves and their children and others.
Wow.
That's a shocking statement. Because these terrorists, when they were finally at the end of their job, what do? They blew themselves up.
Yeah.
So they went in to blow themselves up. Which kid, which 24-year-old kid says, I'm going to blow myself up, but before that I'm going to kill as many French people? What did the French people ever do to you? Nothing. What did the Russian people on the plane flying back from Sharm el-Sheikh do that you had to blow them out of the sky? Yeah. What did they ever do? What a terrible mistake was made by miserable Europe. We killed Jews, and now we're taking in all these Arabs, and what are these Arabs doing?
They kill us now.
They're killing us. That's a shocking
This
article.
is going around, comes around.
That's
Some future time, maybe 20, 30 years from now, they'll be instead of they had the Third Reich, they'll be the Fourth Reich.
Yeah, that's what we talked about,
It'll be
remember?
a different group of people.
I mean, this is a shocking article. It's an amazing article written a few years
Maybe
ago.
this plan of the God.
What? Maybe it's Mashiach ben David coming, but I told you a few weeks ago that if Edom ever made peace with Yishmael, we'd have no future. And now the fact that Edom, which is Europe and the West, and Yishmael keep killing each other, fighting each other, that's a bracha to us.
They're busy.
I tell you, many times, in Lebanon they had a bombing because the Sunnis were bombing the Shiites, whatever it is. And what does the American people say? We wish them both success. That they both should be successful. We wish them both success. I don't know what to tell you, because we're not used to it. We're not used to people. How many Jews blow themselves up in the streets? We're not used to that. It doesn't make sense. It's not a life. Okay. Yitzchok dug 3 wells. The first well, they argue, the shepherds of Avimelech, was called Asek. The second well they called Sitno. And the third well that they left him alone was called Rehovot. So the Slonim Rebbe, Rebbe Avrom Weinberg, in his Sefer Beis Avrom, he says that if you take the first letters of those 3 wells, Asek, Sitna, and Rehovot, it spells the word Russia, evil. But if you take the same 3 letters and you mix it around a little bit, it spells the word Sha'ar, gate. And we know the pasuk in Tehillim, Zeh hashar laHashem, tzadikim yovoru bo. So he says, Machloket, which is how it began, Russia, evil. But if you can find a way to turn it around and make peace, it can become a gate to Shemayim. That means you can take evil and dismantle it and neutralize it, and the words that spell Russia, mix it around, spell gate, Sha'ar. And it could be a gate, let tzadikim yavoru bo. So it's interesting that the same word that spells evil can be the same word that spells gate. The Evan Ezra asked the question. Rivka says, as the children were fighting inside of her, and she says, what's going on over here? And she went to ask Hashem with Shem. And you remember we spoke a few weeks ago that Shem had eaten from the Eitz HaChaim, so he lived a long life. Yeah. It was very long. So the Evan Ezra says, what was bothering Rivka? So he says the children were really moving around. It was called fetal movement.
Pain.
So, but that's common. Many women have fetal movement. Many women feel the baby moving inside, of course. So he says to Evan Ezra that Rivka went to all her friends and says, tell me how you felt when you were pregnant.
Unusual.
It was, and she realized that what she's feeling is unusual. That's what her problem was. She wasn't just scared. She checked into it. It was unusual. The Ramban says different. The Ramban says it was so painful, it hurt her so much, she thought she was going to die.
Yeah.
So she says, if I'm going to die, so what's this all about? I mean, I got married to have children. My husband is telling me that we have to build 12 shvatim, and if I die, what's it good? Many women died in childbirth. In those days, the Gemara brings down that many women died through childbirth. It was dangerous. It was very dangerous. Even today, a woman who gives birth is allowed to be Mechal Shabbat. She's considered in a dangerous situation. Yeah. So Rivka's argument was, Lama Zanoch, I mean, if I die, what's it all about? So that's what she
They wait 20 years.
Right. Now, Rav Avram Weinfeld, one of the Meforshei HaTorah, he brings out an interesting shot. He says, why did Avram Avinu go back to Ur Kasdim? He says because Ur Kasdim, the people there were very stubborn. They were very committed. Avram knew that because they were so stubborn they didn't want to give up their idols. When Avram broke the idols, he ended up in a fiery furnace. He brings down a story from the Kotzker Rebbe. The Kotzker Rebbe was a Hasidic Rebbe, very famous Rebbe. So he wanted to build his dynasty. So he went from town to town. And everywhere he went, they welcomed him with open arms. Oh, Rabbi, please come. You're welcome. You're a guest. We want you to be here. And every town that welcomed him, he says, no, thank you. Finally, he came to the city of Kotsk. What do the people in Kotsk say to him? Who needs you?
Go home.
We have enough rabbis. Go home. We don't want you. Know what he says? That's my town. Now, that's where I want to be. Because now, if I change them and they embrace me, it's real.
They love me.
They love me. It's for real.
Yeah.
Because they told me, get out. Which most rabbis are told, get out. That's why they love me, right? That's how I know you love me. So he says, Avram said, I want you to go back to my family because they're stubborn. They're kshei oref. What happens? Rivka walks by his church. Kid wants to go out. Yeah. Walks by a shul, kid wants to go out. She says, this is not kshei oref, this is wishy-washy.
Wishy-washy?
If it's wishy-washy, im kain, lama zeh anochi, why was I chosen? Avram chose me because I come from a family of stubbornness. Yeah. That if I make up my mind, I stick with it. And now I'm having a kid who's wishy-washy. Im kain, lama zeh anochi, why was I chosen? I must be the wrong candidate. Okay? So that's what it is. Now, we're going to go next year. I'm already preparing on Parshas Chayesara why Rivka was chosen and how hard it is to find the right shidduch. It's not so simple. The Gemara says that finding the right shidduch is as difficult as what?
Parasha.
As Kriyat Yamsuf, like splitting the Yamsuf.
Very hard.
That's what the Gemara in Sota says, which is unusual. It's an unusual term because if you're trying to bring two people together, why give the example of Kriyat Yamsuf when you took two things apart?
Yeah.
You should have said bringing the Yamsuf back together again.
Yeah.
Splitting the Yamsuf is not a good analogy to make shidduchim, but that's a different story. Okay.
They're working opposite.
Listen to this statement. Then we're gonna see. We might even finish early time, even though we started late. Listen to this statement. I want to go through this a little bit with you. Rabbi Wein writes as follows. Listen to Rabbi Wein's opening statement in one of his sheets a year or two ago. He says, perfect parents do not always produce perfect children.
Yes.
You hear that? Okay. Let's understand it. The people of Beersheba or Hebron or wherever Yitzchak and Rivka were living, they see Yaakov, big tzaddik, good full-time learner. No wonder. He loves God, he loves Torah. Well, look at his parents. No wonder. They see Esav, and they ask the question, where did that kid come from?
What's he doing here?
What's he doing here? Where did that kid come from? So some people started the rumor.
Yeah.
I bet you, Sarah became pregnant from Avimelech. And that kid is like from an Avimelech DNA. Now that was ridiculous, and we know it was. Others probably said, well, that Rivka, who's her brother? Laban. And who's her father? Bisuel. Both of them lowlifes. So, the Gemara says that most children are very much like the mother's brothers.
Like uncle, yeah.
like the uncles. Did you know that?
Yes.
What if you have a couple of uncles?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, look at this guy over here. You have any? You have you have nieces and nephews, right? So, the Gemara says that those nieces and nephews are very much like your brother's brother, which is you. So, if those nieces and nephews are good, it means you're a good kid. If they misbehave, whose fault is it?
Your fault.
Your fault.
Bravo.
You're sitting here, you got a family in Israel, and you think that if they misbehave, the parents are blaming them.
No,
They're blaming you. It's all your fault. You know, you poor kid, you're in so much trouble. You don't even realize it. It's your fault.
Why?
So,
Why
because that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that children often mirror the behavior of the wife's brothers. So you have any sisters, or you only have brothers? Ah, so you might be off the hook.
Yeah, you
But
like
they'll
it.
blame you anyway, so don't worry.
You like it.
They'll do
In the
it.
future.
Okay? So, Rabbi Wein says that, and we know this today, because we have children at risk, we know this today,
Okay, look like.
that their good parents don't always produce good children. And he explains why. He says because children grow up. They go to school, they have friends, there's the outside influences, you have television, the internet, the street. So besides what kids learn at home, they learn most of their things on the street and from their friends. You send your kid to school, they come back with all these crazy stories and words that they never heard in your house. And you just hope and pray that everything will go well. So, comes the question, Yaakov and Esav, of course, and how we deal with it. So listen to some of the insights I want to share with you tonight. It's very fascinating. There's a Chassam Sofer that I want to share with you that's very fascinating. So, we have a situation that Yaakov and Esav are about to get brachos. But we know Yitzchak likes Esav. Again, if you look at the Zohar, the Sifrei Kabbalah, Yitzchak saw in Esav certain koach. There was certain potential. We didn't see it because the Torah tells us, but he maybe didn't see the downside of Esav. He didn't fool himself, but he thought Esav had a certain power, which we know he did. Look at Rome. Look at Esav had many, many strong attributes. But anyway, Rivka says to Yaakov, we have a plan. You're going to go in, you're going to trick your father, and you're going to steal those brachos. Now, if someone asked the question, how does Rivka think like this, act like this? Where could she have learned this style? We know the answer. Where did she learn it?
From father.
From her father and brother, from home. I mean, there's no question, there's no surprise to me that Rivka knew how to trick someone. Next week, we're going to see how the other side of the family tricked even Yaakov, who was so smart and so ready. Lavan tricked him.
But maybe it was the Shem and Aver, the message she got from them.
Well, he got a lot of learning from Shem Ve'aver, and he got a lot of skills.
Maybe she got the message from them that it was from Hashem.
Maybe.
It's a trick.
Maybe it was, And we know Yaakov seems like, if you see how Yaakov behaves, it almost seems like he wanted to get caught. Okay? Let me give you the example. Yaakov is now going, he gets dressed up, he puts on goat skin and Esau's clothes. Goat skin smells bad, the clothes smell like Gan Eden, whatever it is. Yaakov is now going in to his father. Now, let's understand what he says. Pasuk Yutes. Right? Vayomer Yaakov Elovi. Yaakov says to his father, Anochi, I'm me, Esav is your firstborn b'chorecha. That's how they read it. Osisi kasher dibarti elai. I did exactly what you wanted. You wanted certain food, I prepared a steak meal for you. Exactly what you wanted. Kumna, please get up. Ding, 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 ding. What's the first mistake?
No.
Please? Yitzchak says to himself, please? Esau never said please in his life.
Where you come from?
Who says please? Esau says please. Esau says, hey you, get up! So, now, you can say, why did Yaakov do this? You could say that sometimes, even when people are trying to act a certain way, but you are who you are. You
mistake.
You talk the way you talk. You can't control yourself.
Yeah.
We call that a faux pas, a slip. You could say that he wanted to get caught. He said this on purpose so his father should know.
This is Yaakov.
Or you could say that Esav said to his father, listen, Dad, I'm afraid Yaakov is going to try to do some shtick, so I'll tell you what. When I come back, I'm going to talk like Yaakov. Thinking that Yaakov would talk like Esav. So that was always the plan. It was always the plan. And that's why Yitzchak says, I'll call Yaakov, for Yadayim Yedei Esav. Boom, perfect, that's the plan. Maybe that's the plan. Okay, that's the first slip. There's going to be another slip. You know what the other slip was? Let me tell you this. Next pasuk is the next slip. When I read it to you, you tell me when you catch the slip. Vayomer Yitzchak el beno. Yitzchak said to his son, Mazeh mihatalin sobani. Wow, that was record time. How did you go out and hunt and catch and prepare? How'd you do it so quickly? Vayomer, he says, Ki hikara Hashem elokecha lefonai. Baruch Hashem, Hashem was there and he helped me. Who doesn't say Baruch Hashem? Never in his life. Never in his life.
Second time he called him.
Second time. A guy like Esav is coming in and his father says, how'd you do it? Esav would have said, me? I'm a trained man. I'm a trained hunter. I can do anything.
I'm professional.
I'm a professional. The last thing Esav would say is, me? Baruch Hashem. Hashem helped me. Hashem got me here. Like in two psukim, two major mistakes.
Yaakov made.
Two major. So the short answer is, maybe he wanted to get caught. Okay. There's a third mistake that nobody catches. The Chassam Sofer says this mistake. I want you to listen to what the Chassam Sofer says. Listen carefully to this thing. In Pasuk Lamed Aleph, when Esav comes in, so in Pasuk Lamed Aleph, Esav is now there. Vayas gamhu matamim, he made the special food. Vayove la'aviv, he brought it to his father. Vayomer la'aviv, he said to his father, Yokum avi, will my father please get up and come to the table?
Oh,
Okay? Esav spoke to his father in third person. Do you know what that means in third person? You know what it means?
Yeah.
When you speak to a Rosh Hashiva, you don't say directly to the Rosh Hashiva, how are you?
Yeah.
You say, how is the rabbi today? How is the Rosh Hashiva today? That's a sign of respect. Yaakov doesn't say that. Yaakov, when he comes, he says, Vayomer Yaakov, Yaakov says to his father, El Aviv, come dad. Mm-hmm. So the Chassam Sofer says, if you think about it, Esav spoke to his father like a Rosh Hashiva, like a rabbi. I have someone who calls me and says, so how's the Rabbi Bryks today? I answer, well, the Rabbi Bryks is fine. It's the way he talks, and he talks third person. And that's not a sign of respect. How do you address your Rebbe? Do you address your Rebbe by, Rabbi so-and-so, or do you say, how's the Rebbe today?
No. Never.
You say, how do you do it?
I just want to say,
What's your rabbi's name?
Rabbi Ephraim.
Rabbi Ephraimov? Do you say, how are you, Rabbi Ephraimov, or do you say, how are you, Rebbe?
How are you, Rabbi?
How are you, Rebbe? You don't call him by his name. It's like third person. So it would seem that Esav is more respectful. Listen to what the Chassam Sofer said. Chassam Sofer says something very interesting. He says, to call your father by third person means you and your father are distant.
Mm.
And a child should be close to his father, not distant. Esav never wanted to get close to Yitzchak. To get close to him means he would have to learn from him. He would have to grow. So he kept distance. And then the Chassam Sofer says that even though we do this with Rosh Hashivas and everything else, he says it creates distance. And that brings the end of Am Yisrael. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. He says fascinating things. I saw somewhere, when we make a bracha, what do we say? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam. When we do Shmona Esrei, we don't do that. We say Baruch Ato Hashem Magen Avraham. We don't say Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam Magen Avraham. Or Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam L'Chayim Esim. We don't do that. Everywhere else we do, not Shmona Esrei.
Why?
Why? So this Pirush said, imagine your father is the king, and you're going out and you're in public. How do you address the king? Your Majesty, the king.
Yeah.
But when you're home privately, how do you address dad? Because you're home privately. He says, when you're in public, you're making a bracha sha'akol. Everybody's listening to the bracha. Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam. But Shmona Esrei is private.
Yeah.
You do it quietly. It's between you and Hashem. You know what that means? A son to a father. Now you just say Baruch Ato Hashem Magen Avraham. Baruch Ato Hashem L'Chayim Esim. You don't have to make any titles. It's private. It's secret. It's between the two of you. So the Chassam Sofer says as follows. He says there's a famous Gemara. The Gemara says that Yirmiyahu Hanavi, after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, asked the question, Alma of the Ha'oretz, why was the land destroyed? So the Gemara answers, because they didn't do Birkas HaTorah. They learned Torah without making a bracha first. So everybody jumps on this Gemara and says, what are you talking about? The first Beis HaMikdash, Yirmiyahu lived in the first Beis HaMikdash. We know why it was destroyed. Because they did Gilui Arayot, and Shvichat Damim, and Avodah Zarah. There's no question. There's no mystery. Why is Yirmiyahu saying, why was the earth destroyed? So the answer is, listen to his answer. He says, Yirmiyahu was not asking why the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. We know why. That was destroyed because of Avrayos and Gili and Shvichas Damim and Avodah Zarah. That's why the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. He wants to know, how do we get there? Alma of the Oretz, what happened? There was such a beautiful country, such beautiful people. They had Yehoshua, they had Shoftim, they had a David HaMelech, a Shlomo HaMelech. How do we get from here down here? He says, you know why? Because they never made the bracha Birkas HaTorah properly. Meaning, they never connected with the rabbis. They never connected with the Rosh Hashivas. He says, Chizkiyahu HaMelech put a sword in the Beis Medrash. And he says, whoever doesn't know, the sword will eat him up. So people knew Mishnayos Baal Peh, and they had kollels, and they had dirshu programs, and they had all those Ubonim programs, and they had Pirchei, and they had NCSY, and they were learning tremendous Torah. But you know what happened afterwards? Nothing stayed. Because when they spoke to the rabbi, you know how they spoke to their Rebbe? How was the Rebbe, the Rosh Hashiva? Was always distant. They never connected to the Rosh Hashiva. And at the end of the day, they went home, and the Rosh Hashiva went home, and they never connected. They never had a father-son relationship. And what does the Gemara say? That a Rosh Hashiva, a Rebbe, is like your father.
Yeah.
But they never treated them like a father. They never went and said to the Rebbe, you know, Rebbe, I'm having a birthday party. All my friends are coming. You're one of my friends. Please come. I had a bris. I had a boy. I want to invite you to the bris. You know, please come. They didn't have that relationship. They weren't close. They never stayed close to the Rebbe. I have people who have Rosh Hashivas that after 20 years they call their Rosh Hashiva, they have a problem, they want to talk it out. They're close to their Rosh Hashivas. And I have people who have Rosh Hashivas that don't even remember the names of the Rosh Hashivas. The Rosh Hashivas don't even remember their name. So that's what Yirmiyahu says. That's what he says. He says, you want to know why the world got destroyed? You want to know why we went from being such a beautiful nation to Avodah Zarah, Shvichas Damim, Gili Arayos. How do we get there? How do we go from here all the way down there? You know why? We learned Torah, yes, but we had no connections. Whenever we spoke about our rabbis and our rebbes and our Rosh Hashivas and our Gedolim, it was at a distance. We never let them into our lives. If you don't let them into your lives, they won't change you. They won't affect you. I remember this story. I want to share with you this story. I told it to you probably a few years ago. It's a story that was written by Sheila Feinstein. Sheila Feinstein is the wife of Reb Reuven Feinstein. And Reb Reuven Feinstein is the son of Reb Moshe Feinstein. Okay. So, Reb Reuven Feinstein is Rosh Hashiva in Staten Island. And I know both the Feinsteins. Baruch I know Reb Reuven Feinstein and Sheila Feinstein. My wife and I were in Eretz Yisrael one year, and we took a trip with them to Hebron. We went on a tour with them to Hebron. So our families have been friendly for a long time. I'm a ton of our family. We've been friendly for a long time. Listen to this story, she said. You got to hear this story. It's an amazing story. She said that towards the end of Reb Moshe Feinstein's life, he used to go for Yom Kippur to Staten Island Yeshiva. So she came one Erev Yom Kippur to pick up Reb Moshe to drive him to Staten Island. Okay. Reb Moshe lived in the Lower East Side. As Reb Moshe is coming out of his building, an older man is walking in. This man is not wearing a yarmulke, nothing. He's Jewish, but he's not wearing a yarmulke. He's not religious. And Reb Moshe talks to him for 15 to 20 minutes. Now you got to understand something. Reb Moshe, the whole world needed Reb Moshe Feinstein. If you could speak to him for 30 seconds, you were lucky. Here's a guy, not religious. It's Erev Yom Kippur. He probably is not even fasting on Yom Kippur. And Reb Moshe has to get to Staten Island, and Reb Moshe is talking to him for 20 minutes. Okay. Reb Moshe gets into the car. Okay. And Sheila Feinstein says, who was that guy? You were speaking to him for a long time. And he says, well, he lives in my building. He says, it's 20 minutes. And Reb Moshe says, just leave it. Forget about it. Then Reb Moshe realized that he forgot his suitcase. He brought a little suitcase, so he was going away for a few days to Staten Island. So he says, I left my suitcase in the lobby. So Sheila Feinstein said to Reb Moshe, okay, Dad, I'll get it, And she goes into the lobby, and here's this guy opening up his mailbox. So she couldn't hold herself back. So she goes to this guy, and she says to this guy, I see you were talking to Rabbi Feinstein for a long time. It must have been a very important conversation. And the guy says, no, we were just schmoozing about the weather and about politics and stuff like that. She says, boy, that's very, very unusual. She says, no, this Rabbi Feinstein talks to me all the time. She says, are you religious? He says, well, no, I'm really not religious. I know tonight is a holy day, Yom Kippur. I probably am not even going to fast. But that Reb Moshe Feinstein's a nice guy. He always talks to me. Okay, she gets in the car, that's it. 6 months later, this old man passes away. And Sheila Feinstein has to take Reb Moshe. He wants to go to the funeral. So she's driving her father-in-law to the funeral. Comes to the funeral. This guy has 6 children. All 6 children are wearing yarmulkes or shomer Shabbos. Their wives cover their hair, wear shaitels. Now she's really blown away. Here's a guy, not religious at all. Doesn't even fast on Yom Kippur. He has 6 children, and all of them are religious.
What's going on?
What's going on? How did that happen? Comes back to the car with Reb Moshe, and she says to her father, she says, how did this guy have 6 children who are all Shomer Torah mitzvahs? So Reb Moshe says, now I'll explain to you what you asked me 6 months ago. When this guy first came to me and wanted to talk to me, just to say, hi, what's new? Do you like the Yankees, whatever it is, or do you like the Mets? I had not a minute for him, but I gave him time, and I spoke to him. Why did I do it? Because look what happened. This guy went upstairs, and he came to his dinner table, and he had his 6 little children around. What do you think he said to those kids? He says, guess what, kids? When I came in today to the apartment, Rabbi Feinstein on the 2nd floor said hello to me. That Rabbi Feinstein, he's such a nice guy. These Orthodox Jews, they're really special. And the kids grew up every day hearing, that Rabbi Feinstein, he's such a nice guy. These Orthodox Jews, they're good people. And every kid became frum. Had I said to the guy, listen, you're not religious, I have no time for you. He would have come upstairs. You know what he would have said to his children around the table? That Rabbi Feinstein thinks he's better than me. That Rabbi Feinstein has no respect for me. I hate those Orthodox Jews. And his kids would have grown up hating Orthodox Jews. He says, I wasn't trying to change this guy. I wasn't trying to make this guy religious. I was thinking about the next generation. That was Reb Moshe Feinstein. a connection.
Yeah.
Connection. You're here at the table, that rabbi of the shul, did you hear what he said today? He's such a lousy speaker. So what does your kid want? Your kid's going to want to go to that shul? Your kid's going to want to daven in that shul? Your kid's going to grow up and want to be part of that shul? Your kid's going to grow up and say, all rabbis are terrible. How do you know this? My father used to say it to me all the time at home. Every Shabbos, my father would sit at the table and say, this rabbi's no good, that rabbi's no good, this rabbi's no good. So you grow up saying, I hate rabbis.
That's in his mind.
But if your father sits at the table and says, you'll never believe what happened. This week I saw the rabbi, and we went and we had a nice conversation. He's such a nice rabbi, that rabbi. I'm going to go to that shul because I really like that rabbi. And you grow up around the table saying, that rabbi is so good, and that rabbi is such a big tzaddik, and that rabbi is such a big Talmud Chacham. And I heard this shir from this rabbi, and this is what he said. And you grow up saying, wow, my father really likes this. It's really, it's like a good meal. He really enjoys it. Well, I want the same enjoyment. If this rabbi made my father so happy, there's a good chance he'll make me happy. I'm going to go there. That's what Moshe said. He says, by just spending a few minutes with this guy, talking about the Yankees, all 6 of his children are Shomer Torah mitzvahs. And she walked away and she says, wow. Wow. That is how you educate children. It's not about the Chumash, it's not about the Mishnah, it's not about the Gemara. It's about the attitude. It's about the connection. Yirmiyahu says, why was the world destroyed? Because there was no connection. Let me go a little bit further. There's a few more minutes left. Let me go a little bit further. There's a Gemara in Shabbos. Gemara in Shabbos is Chof Gimel Amud Beis. Omar Rav Huna. Rav Huna said it as follows. Harogel b'ner, if a person lights candles, which means Shabbos candles, Hanukkah candles, it means also that the house is lit. We call that in Yiddish a lichtike house, a lighted house. I'll give you an example. Until recently, when I put on the lights in my house Friday night, they stayed on all night. Now for the living room, dining room, I put on a timer, but nowhere else in the house. Everything else has lights. Yeah. They're on 24 hours. And even the timers go off at midnight and go back on at 6:30 in the morning. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning on Shabbos morning, so the lights go back on for me. He says, when you're Shabbos in a home, and people have these little lights because they don't want to burn, you have a dark house.
Yes.
You have a dark house. So the Gemara says, if you have a light house, like a house that's full of light, bright, you will have children, Talmidei Chacham. It's interesting. People ask for skulas and brachos. The Gemara says, Harogel, listen to the Gemara says, Hazoher b'mezuzah. A person is very careful. He always tries to buy a better quality mezuzah. There's the $10 mezuzah, there's a $50, he buys a $50. I like this because I'm a sofer. I write very fancy mezuzahs for me. What do you get out of this? What's your reward? Zoche l'dira no, you'll get a nice house. Come to my house. Come to my house. You want a house like mine? Just get nice mezuzahs. It's not my suggestion. It's Gemara. The Gemara's suggestion. This is what the Gemara says.
Say again.
Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chof Gimel. The Gemara says, Hazoyer b'mezuzah, if you're careful getting a nice mezuzah, Zoche l'dira no, Hashem will reward you with a beautiful home to put the mezuzah on. Hazor b'tzitzis, if you're careful when you buy tzitzis, that it's kosher 100%, Zoche l'talis no, you'll have nice clothes. If you're careful when you're young with tzitzis, you'll walk around with fancy suits. Means you can afford the fancy suits. Hazor b'kiddush, if you're careful when you make kiddush, nice cup, you fill it with wine, you're not stingy. Zoichem amale garva yain, you'll be rich, you'll have barrels of wine, means you can afford it. Now, it doesn't say over here in the Gemara, if you're careful when the Oral Kodesh is open, that you stand up for the Torah. Right? Kovod Torah. It's not on the list. Not on the list. It doesn't make the list. Why not? Because how often do we open the Oral Kodesh? 3 times a week. And we take out the Torah for 10 minutes. And then we put it back, and there's a safe. We lock it up, and you don't open it again. So there's disconnect. People don't walk around holding the Sefer Torah. So it's not on the list. We would think if a person always jumps up, the Yoren Kodesh is open, and when the Torah comes out, kisses it right away. Whoa, they're going to have great children. No, because it's just a few times. You need things that are connections. Next Gemara. Omar Rava. The Rachem Rabbona, if you love Rabbona, you love the rabbi. Okay? Havale Bonim Rabbona. You'll have children who are Rabbona. Because if you love the rabbi, they'll love the rabbi. If they love the rabbi, they'll grow up to be Talmidei Chacham.
That's what Rabbi Feinstein.
The Moke Rabbona, if you show respect to Rabbona, you'll have sons-in-law. Your daughters will marry good people. And then it says, if you have respect for Rabbanan, you will grow up to be one of the Rabbanan also. Okay? One last thought. Listen to this last thought, and I'm going to call it a night. Someone once went to the Brisker Rov. In Eretz Yisrael, the Brisker Rov was walking down the street with 3 or 4 of his children, and one child was more special than the next. So the story goes that he asked the Brisker Rov, how come, we see so many families where this child went off the path and this child went off the path. How come all your children are so religious? They asked that to the Brisker Rov. You know what the Brisker Rov answered? It's such an amazing answer. He says, when parents put their children to sleep at night, little babies in the crib, what do parents do? They sing a song. Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. He says, you know what I did when I put my little children to sleep? I would say, Shir Hamalos, Mimama Kim Kosich. I would say to him, I davened by the cribs that my children should be well. My children should be safe. My children should be Talmidei Chacham. He says, parents who sing songs like Rock-a-bye Baby, their children are falling out of trees. That's crazy. You want good children? You daven every day for good children. They say that the Stipler would daven every day, say Tehillim for his little son Chaim Kanievsky. Someone said to the Stipler, your son Chaim Kanievsky is 52 years old already.
Wow.
And the Stipler says, so what? He's still my child, and I say Tehillim for him every day. Now, Reb Chaim Kanievsky at 52 knew Shas, listen, look at him today. When he was 52, he was pretty good. He was pretty far up there. And what did his father do? His father says, every day I say to him, what do you say to him for? He should be well. He should be Shomer Torah mitzvos. He should fear Hashem. So the Brisker Rov said, if you want good children, it's not just about the school they go to and the food they eat and the house you raise them in and the friends they keep. You know what really you need to do? You just need to daven every day. Because even the best homes, anything can happen.
Yes.
So you daven. That's what the Brisker Rov says.
Ability.
You say Shir Hamalos. Esa einai ela hori me'ayin yavo esri. You daven to Hashem. But what do we see from here? We see from Yaakov, we see from Esau. The mistakes they made, the way they spoke, the way they looked at the world. But the Chassam Sofer says it straight. He says, make a connection. If your home is a home where Talmidei Chachamim and Rabbonim are your friends and they're always over and they enjoy your simchas and they're part of your life and you talk with respect about them and you have such a smile on your face when you mention the rabbi's name. Most people mention the rabbi's name and they, what their face looks like? Like they're so angry. He says, if your kids can grow up seeing your face smile when you mention the rabbi, the Rosh Hashiva's name, what do you think your kids are going to say? Wow, I want that for me. And that's how you make your kids religious. Have a good night, everybody.
Zach Baruch.